Hello everyone, good afternoon. I'm here to talk to you about the Sacrament of Matrimony, a continuation of our series. I enjoy very much being with all of you, as you know, and this time of the pandemic, it's a grace in one way because it gives me an opportunity to meet with you and to talk to you about some issues. Our faith, God, the saints, our Blessed Lady. Well, we have begun a couple days ago on the series of the Sacrament of Matrimony. And I was talking to you about the theology of marriage. I spoke to you about the spiritual goods of marriage. I talked to you about it is a vocation that one is called to by God to live out in this life as they path their way into eternal salvation by God's grace. You see, everyone is given a vocation, whether to be single, whether to be married, whether to be ordained or a religious. We are all called to lead a vocational way of life. And that vocation, that way of life, helps us in a beautiful way as God has navigated the path for us to eternal salvation. So you're called and meant to be married if you have really listened to God speaking to your heart about that. That's why in preparation for any of the sacraments, there must be prayer. There must be a time of prayer and reflection, almost a retreat. I believe married couples, or those preparing for marriage, I should say, should go on a retreat. If not 5 days, at least a weekend, where they stop and they pray together, go to confession, have some time in adoration, pray the rosary, and listen to various talks on the sacrament of marriage. That would be a wonderful retreat in preparation for this great sacrament. So we talked about the ends of marriage, or the fruits of marriage, or the spiritual goods. You're going to hear those words: ends of marriage, the fruit of marriage, or the spiritual goods of marriage. So let's just try to take them in the context of what that means. Well, the spiritual goods of marriage are, permanence, faithfulness, and open to life. I've used the words that they are, definitely a beautiful gift in many ways of the unitive nature of marriage, man and woman. The indissoluble characteristic of marriage, that it is until death do you part. And the procreation and education of offspring. They're the three goods of marriage. They're beautiful, and there's something that I think all engaged couples should meditate or reflect upon in a retreat. So, of course, many people say to love each other. Absolutely. But in loving each other, it understands what that unitive character of marriage is all about. That it's for both of you. It talks about the indissolubility of marriage, that love. And that love is all about the procreative and education character of marriage in the offspring, the fruit of your love. So when people are preparing for marriage and they want to pray, they pray for an intense understanding of God's love as it is articulated and personified in the couple. To be with one another, to have that unitive nature, the two becoming one. What does that mean? Do we talk about that enough? What does that surrender mean in that unitive characteristic of marriage? You see it in the marriage that Christ has with his church. Isn't Christ married to the church? Absolutely. Christ is indeed married to the church. He is the bridegroom, and we are the bride. And that marriage has taken on a special characteristic, that he has laid down his life for his bride, the church. That he has surrendered. What a beautiful love that is. It's all, the motive is love. It's never selfishness. It's never for oneself. It's always for the other. That laying down and that surrendering. So both the couple, the bridegroom and the bride, must have that understanding in their spiritual growth, that they lay down their life for their spouse. That's very important. Pride is removed. Selfishness is removed. Lust, anger, gluttony, envy, sloth. Do you see how the capital sins are far removed from the couple? Because this is a permanent relationship built upon faithfulness to the openness of human life and the creation of the whole person, the body and soul of that person. That couples are co-creators with God. Isn't that beautiful? That's something to reflect upon. So I want you to understand the ends or the goods of marriage. So they could be simply remembered as permanent, faithful, and open to life. I say unitive, indissoluble, and procreative. But you understand them. Even if you're married for 10, 12, 13, 25, 30 years, why don't you just take the time to go through the ends of marriage yourself and pray. Pray about the characteristics of marriage, the ends of marriage, the spiritual goods of marriage, and see how your love is conducive to the spiritual goods of marriage. Because people say, what is the purpose of holy matrimony? That's a very interesting question. What is the purpose? Why did God create marriage? Aren't we called to love each other? All people? Isn't the single person called to love? Isn't the ordained person called to love? So we know it's not just love, because love is the foundation of all the vocations. So when we say, what's the purpose of marriage? Be careful with your answer, because we're all called to love. That's the message of the gospel. But what is unique about the vocation of marriage? What about that love? What are its spiritual goods? See, that's where the rubber hits the road now. It must be a permanent relationship. I take you for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness or in health, all the days of my life. Permanent. It's exclusive to just the couple. It does not include any other person, but just the couple, in which Christ is the foundation of the love, calling you to the sacrament. So we say it is permanent until death. And it is faithful. Faithful fidelity means not only in a physical manner, but emotional, psychological, spiritual manner as well. Many people often just think of faithfulness being that you don't cheat on your spouse. You don't flirt. You don't sleep with someone else. Of course, they are major, major obstacles of this love. But it also means to be very conscious of who they are as a person. I think your spouse is more than just a physical person. I think you would agree with me. That your spouse has feelings, that they are a spiritual person, that they have spiritual needs as well. Are you helping each other to get to heaven? If you deliberately miss Mass on Sunday, you're being unfaithful to them because you're not taking care of their spiritual needs. I want everyone to understand that the church does not just mean a physical part of this faithfulness. That's what we all think about, the physical aspect. How many times have I preached both and, not either or? I mean, I'm sure you've heard, I hear myself in my sleep because I keep on saying it, and I only repeat myself because repetition is the mother of learning. You have to understand all this. You know, they say if you hear a thing one time, it doesn't stick. 2 times, it might be like a little wind blowing around. 3 times, you might see it, and then it goes away. 4 times, you're like, and then the 5th time they say, boom. All of us learn differently, don't we? How are you as a learner? Are you a visual learner? Are you a learner that looks and reads? Auricular learner? What kind of learning do you have? What makes you who you are? Doing? You have to do it to get it. Sometimes you can't read about how to fix this. You have to just do it. Let me just tackle this project. So it's important that we hear these things. And I want you, in your mind, to memorize the 3 goods of marriage. Because it's important to know that it's a permanent, faithful, and procreative love. That's what marriage is. It's a permanent, faithful, and procreative act of love. And we have to be always reminded of that. And that's why couples should be praying for that as they journey toward the sacrament. The sacrament's not like a light switch that you put it on and off. But you grow in that. Remember I told you yesterday, grace builds on nature, it doesn't destroy it. And so, as you pray and as you're engaged and your boyfriend proposes to you, I guess a girlfriend can too, but I think it's a boyfriend, because it's always the groom taking the responsibility. When your boyfriend proposes you, you enter into an engagement, an intense period of preparation for the sacrament. Now, let me tell you about both and. Usually, the engagement's all about like getting everything ready, getting your folder ready, you know, what color we're gonna have, and what kind of dessert, and where's the venue, and what my bridesmaids are gonna wear, and, you know, what's something new, old, blue, barred, whatever. And then they, you know, guys don't get all involved with that, but girls do, and not knocking that either. Some of these are small T traditions, they're customs, remember? And, you know, you're going through the menu, and then your list, your invitations, who's going to put the invitations out, who's going to collect them, who's going to seat everybody at certain tables because we can't seat that person with that person, oy vey. So all that kind of stuff. Okay, That's nice. That's physical. That's one part of it. How are you preparing spiritually? Where's your binder for the spiritual stuff? First thing is your prayer for your spouse. As you enter into this intense preparation called engagement. This is the intense preparation leading to the sacrament. And then thereafter. Because then you have to live the sacrament. See, you celebrate the sacrament, then you live the sacrament. It's not once and done once the Mass is over. It's the living out of it. And so that's what the prayer is all about. As you enter into this period of intense preparation and for the lifestyle that you're called to live. Remember I told you yesterday to move over from the single life to the married life is not always easy. And it has to be anchored in prayer. Anchored in prayer. And then you pray for your spouse. Remember, you're not to be the superwoman or the superman. You're supposed to be the spiritual anchor for them, and they for you. You help each other towards sanctity, holiness. That's the key. If that's not the primary reason of why you're preparing for marriage, then you're entering into the sacrament for all the wrong reasons. It has to be both and, a physical reality as well as a spiritual reality. You're taking care of your body and your soul. And so in this binder too are the three ends of, or the three goods of marriage. And to talk about that, do you talk to your spouse about that? What about permanence? What about faithfulness? What about the procreation and education of children? Unitive, indissoluble, and procreative. These three ends of marriage. Talk to your spouse, your future spouse, talk to your fiancé about these often. So at dinner, talk to each other about that. Talk to each other now. Because this is what the intense preparation is all about. Sometimes engagement's for 1 year, sometimes it's for 2 years. It's important that you understand what marriage is before you even articulate the vows. We're told as seminarians, you better be a priest before you lay down on the cathedral floor. Because if you're not a priest here and here, don't think you're going to be a priest there. You need to name it and claim it and let it be part of your life. So the physical and the spiritual characteristics of marriage, talk about that and make that part of the spiritual journey as well. So prayer and Mass. Do you both go to Mass together? When was the last time you went to confession? I mean, you want to go to confession, don't you, before you enter into marriage? You don't want all that junk on your soul, do you? You want to go into marriage just like your wedding dress, pure. Don't go into church with a mud-stained dress. Nor would you want to go into church with a darkened soul. I would say this to anybody, and I consider you friends. So I'm telling you this. So for both the groom and the bride, I'm only using the analogy of the dress for the bride, but I'm also talking about the groom as well. How can you take on the responsibility of being a man, a provider, a groom, an example for your wife and your future family when you don't let go and let God? You have to think about those things now. And it takes time. It's not a light switch. All right? It takes time. So the groom and the bride need an intense period of preparation. We call that engagement. So it's not just about planning for the reception and the dresses and the invitations and the favors and the honeymoon. It's also preparing spiritually. And I think spiritual gets kicked to the curb. Like I said to you yesterday, oh, God knows, I love God. I have to do this now. That's why everything gets muddy. Because God is kicked out. God is not included in the wedding. And I mean that seriously. God is not included in the wedding because you have not given him enough time like you have given all the other things time. Do you know how long it takes to prepare for a wedding? Physically and spiritually. There needs to be a balance of the Martha and the Mary. If not, it's lopsided. And your heart will tell you that every day of your married life. So please, work on the spiritual side of matrimony. If both of you are Catholic, you should have a nuptial mass. That is the sacrament of matrimony in the context of Holy Mass. Go to confession. Make sure you're prepared spiritually. Go on a retreat. We're going to talk about pre-Cana. And we're going to talk about all those things as we go on to the series. But I want to just set the base now and the foundation now so that you have an idea, right? As when the day comes for marriage, it is only the beginning, the first day of marriage. Because marriage continues to the day that you die. So you'll receive the sacrament, and that is the beginning, the first day of married life. It's not once and done. No. It's the beginning of a whole life together. 100% of the groom and 100% of the bride. The total laying down of oneself. Is the bride truly surrendering and letting go? Is the groom truly surrendering and letting go? Giving of themselves to each other 100%. And understanding what matrimony is. It is a reflection of Christ's marriage with us, the church. Christ's marriage with us, the church. Christ the bridegroom. The church, the bride. The total surrendering that Christ gave on the cross. And the total surrender that we give to Christ each day. And the garment, the wedding garment that you and I wore on the day of our marriage was the baptismal garment. Doesn't that make sense? The white garment that our mom and our dads dressed us on the day of our baptism. We were clothed with immortality. We became the church, the bride of Christ. And so that's why we were dressed in the white garment. And that's the day it began. And every day thereafter. The union of us and Christ. Okay, everybody? I just want you to understand that as we dive into the mystery of the sacrament so that you have an understanding of what this great gift of matrimony is to those who are called to it. Have a nice day, everybody. God bless you. God love you.